Hey guys, it's Mad Static. And licensed games based off pre-existing non-gaming franchises have been around as long as games have in general. But specifically in the 6th generation of gaming consoles, the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, there was an infestation of them. By this time, developers and the technology they worked with was getting really comfortable and competent with the 3D gaming space, shifting most priorities to it. With 3D's appealing look and the endless possibilities that could spawn from it, a prime opportunity was presented to any company outside of the gaming industry with a big entertainment name to do something. Like anything. Games that took the template of ones like Mario, Devil May Cry, Grand Theft Auto, The Sims, and did that, except as quickly and cost effectively as possible, with an already popular IP behind it. That's the template for most licensed games. We got kart racers, beat 'em ups, shooters, party games, rhythm games, a surprising amount of quiz shows. They were all there, and most of them were really, really bad. But if a team pushed through with 110% effort and truly believed in themselves and the product, then they could put out a game that was only kind of bad. Then there was the once in a blue moon appearance of something that was actually good. For better and more often worse, I grew up with these games. But today, it doesn't really seem like they exist anymore. Making games isn't something anybody can just do now. I mean, literally anybody can do it now with the advancement of technology, but if you're looking to make a worthwhile investment on these things, it's a big business. With the widespread knowledge of video games and each one's actual worth through the internet, the fierce competition of the casuals and children's market, and the fat-ass check that would be needed to make something halfway decent, licensed games only really have two options. Either be a mobile game or a Fortnite skin. But still, some games fight through the inevitable failure and come out regardless. And quite out of nowhere last year, a Samurai Jack game was released. Now, in case you don't know what this show is, you freaking weirdo, Samurai Jack is the early 2000s Cartoon Network show, headed by Genndy Tartakovsky, had to put dashes between each syllable. In the show, an evil demon named Aku starts destroying everything and taking over the world, but a samurai named Jack almost stops him with his magic sword. But right before Jack can kill him, Aku sends Jack into the future, where Aku has already succeeded in taking over the world. Now the entire series follows Jack as he tries to find a way to get back to the future and stop any of this from ever happening. It was cancelled after a 4-season run, but around 4 years ago actually, the show was brought back by Adult Swim for a now adult-oriented finale. Now I had a passing fondness for the show when I was growing up, but fully grown now and having watched it, I can really appreciate what was done here, especially with the last season. Which is why I had my eye on this game ever since it was announced. After finishing this game, I can tell you that it offers you a trip back to the past, not just for the show, but for games in general. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. It's alright. I came in expecting something pretty average, and that is what I got, but it's okay because I had fun. The annoying part is, though, there are obvious signs of this game offering a bit more than what you'd expect, but they just never fully come through in the end. The story is a good example of this. It doesn't really count as its own story, it's what you'd expect as the game finds an excuse to have you go through events from the show. Right before the end of the series where Jack gets back to the past and actually kills Aku, spoiler, Aku says fuck you and does the same thing he did in the beginning of the show with its time portal, having Jack go back and redo some of the show's best moments. It's pretty simple stuff, just cut down playable versions of some episodes. Throughout the stages, you'll run into familiar friends like the Scotsman, a multitude of his 50 daughters, the Samurai. Fuck this guy. They have a few stock lines, but most of the time there will be like 3 lines of dialogue, where they tell Jack that there's danger up ahead, he thanks them for the help, and then they give him some dog water. That's not an expression of any kind. There's literally a British dog with a monocule that will give you hot water every time he sees you. The story isn't very significant in the experience, but it has the chance to be. It's not a literal replay of events. Jack is technically going into the past of the future that he was stuck in. This opens the opportunity for the story to touch on some interesting concepts. And yeah, I usually wouldn't comment on missed potential with a game like this, but what caught me off guard was the fact that they attempted this idea. In one of the last stages of the game, Jack realizes that he could try to use this revisit to change how events end up turning out, which was him killing all of his girlfriend's sisters. Oh my bad, I did it again. Spoiler warning everyone. Just more acknowledgement of him knowing how things turn out could have made for some fun moments, but it really never does anything like that again. The same sentiment also applies towards the look of this game. It feels like an HD enhanced version of a PS2 game, so not very impressive and pretty standard, especially for the source material. Samurai Jack is a very visually distinct show, taking a lot from Eastern animation but still having the look and feel of the other cartoons like Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab. So while I would have preferred something in the vein of Okami, I'm not delusional. They work with what they've got and get as much of the aesthetic feel of the show as they can. There are a lot of blank spaces and weird looking faces, but I think they succeeded. The environment is engaging, actually gorgeous if you're in a specific place, which makes it suck that there are so many invisible walls. The game's design is very linear, most of the time. All throughout certain places I'll try exploring an area that looks open just to be told no, but in another place, a cliffside that looks like an instant respawn or something that just looks like a regular wall will actually lead to a hidden area. I don't mind the inconsistency, it's for the betterment of the game. I just wish they were a little bit clearer about it. It doesn't really matter since it all leads to dog water in the end. And to put that joke into perspective, it recovers about half a quarter of your health. It's not very useful. But on to gameplay mechanics, this is where I have a real problem with this game. The combat is fun. How dare they? At its core, it's a pretty simple action game, with dodging, blocking, counters, projectiles, and light platforming mixed in. It's a classic formula, which is why every other game in the 6th generation took a similar route. Odds are, if you've ever played a video game in your life, you'll feel right at home with this. But from there, they add a sizable amount of options and variety for your fighting style. Different weapons have completely unique feelings to them, projectiles can be lifesavers, and when mixing in all of your movements into crowded fights, the game can be exhilarating actually. The combat of the game can be very fun and enjoyable, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if half the people who picked up this game never figured this out. There is a cause to blame for your upgrades being so meaningful, as the value of what one receives is based on the value of what one already has. The game starts you off with dick shit. Combat at the start is pitifully basic, and it will stay that way for a good 2 to 3 hours before you start unlocking stuff. You have to unlock the bread and butter combos here, because you only start out with the fucking weight. Even after you get some basic necessities, the process of unlocking new moves and upgrades is ridiculously long. There are a lot of skills locked behind even more skills, a lot of options to pursue once you've collected enough, and a lot of money being charged by this piece of shit. I understand why it's so hard to get, since it's pretty much the only incentive you have to keep playing. It's not even like including cool unlockables or extras would have taken more time or resources, since they can just include what they already had on hand. Character model viewers, soundtracks, concept art, the behind the scenes interviews that you can instead find on YouTube right now. Games were full of this kind of stuff back in my day. Cartoon Network Racing even went as far as including free episodes of their shows. They could have done something like that, but instead pretty essential shit is locked behind progress, which probably turned many of the already few players of this game off. It's not just that, but inevitably, like most games of this ilk, there are a few major flaws in the design of the actual gameplay. While the gameplay as a whole is solid enough, some situations and obstacles, while definitely possible, were not tested enough, and tend to break the systems of the game, leaving you with almost nothing you're able to do. This happened in a lot of these older 6th gen games, even the better ones like Psychonauts and Mario Sunshine. Those moments as a kid that made you swear you just sucked at video games only to revisit them later and realize it was the game being stupid and not working. Specifically, being stun locked became a common problem in these, and it's the same situation in this game. It is damn near impossible to start the game on hard difficulty since the game will throw a bunch of enemies with projectiles at you, and again, you have no options at this point. It's a problem that comes into play as the game increases into difficulty by throwing more enemies at you at once. I think the developers knew this was a problem since they encourage you every time you die to lower the difficulty. It's the first thing that comes up. Of course though, if the game's own AI can break it, then so can you, but that's never really a good thing, is it? I said that once in a blue moon, a truly great licensed game would come along. Well, the day Samurai Jack Battle Through Time came out, the moon was more of a grayish navy. It was kind of blue, but not completely. You probably can't enjoy this game unless you're a fan of the franchise, but even if you are, it's going to take some work to have fun. But there is a decent experience in this game, one that made me nostalgic, not only for Samurai Jack, but the mediocre 3D action games of my childhood. It's not a game everyone can appreciate, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't.